Welcome to the Athletics Week in Football, brought to you by BOYLE Sports. As 2 wins out of 2 for Liverpool so far in the Premier League, but they can't stop conceding. Why is that? And should Arne Slot be concerned as they look to defend their title? Let's get into this, gentlemen. JJ, John, let's do this. I mean, JJ, it's Slot's first season, and there was always that conversation about Jurgen Klopp playing with chaos, and then Slot is the guy that maybe added a bit more control to that chaos. But from what you're looking at so far from Liverpool's first 2 games, is it fair to say that some chaos is seeping into Arne Slot's work?
It seems like it might be, but we know that he wants to have control. He said early in his career at Liverpool, maybe the only slight difference there is that after we win the ball, I like to go forward just as Jurgen liked it. But I sometimes like it when players try to keep the ball, not play the difficult ball, which is where the kind of chaos comes. Whereas Jurgen, or the former regime as he calls them, maybe liked the chaotic scenes in and around the 16 a lot as well. And we can see in data that Liverpool became more patient in attack, and that corresponded with a higher chance prevention. So that could be that they are controlling things a bit more. If Klopp's going like end to end and direct, and that's creating chaotic moments, that's maybe what you don't want if you're not prepared to defend against them. But it sometimes also depends a bit on the players you have. This is the important thing to remember, because you have tactical systems, but the players really make them work, because that's how football is. And so when you look at the players you've got on the pitch, so last season against Newcastle, for instance, Liverpool had Alexander-Arnold playing on one of them. And when you play Alexander-Arnold, he has lots of dialogue with Salah especially. They're two probably most key creative players. And so Salah would receive the ball in wide areas from Alexander-Arnold. And when Salah's there, obviously teams are worried about him and they'll put markers straight to him straight away. They'll create space for others because that's where he is. But when Salah can't dribble past 3 players at once, he can play it back to Alexander-Arnold because he can spot all the players on the other side of the pitch. And Alexander-Arnold has the skill set to ping it to the other side. But the players they've brought in, like Jeremy Frimpong, he can't really do that. It's a different kind of player. He'll play on the outside and he'll try and run past you, which is a very different thing. Against Bournemouth, as Wirtz brings the ball forward, an example I'm showing on a board right now, it goes wide to Frimpong. He'll then carry the ball forward. You've got Salah and everyone inside, and he'll maybe try and play like an early ball across the box.
Is that how he passes the ball, that squiggly line?
The exact line that you can't see if you're listening. Yes, that's exactly what happens. But is this what Slot wants him to do? Or is this what players are individually deciding to do? Because we know that Slot's probably building up a bit deeper, but when you're building up deeper, you need a player like Alexander-Arnold to try and get you forward, because that's the kind of player that can do that. But Frimpong as well, as an example, against Bournemouth when he was playing, it's the only example I've got of him. When he receives the ball, in this exact example I've got here, you can see that Florian Wirtz running through the middle is trying to get into this space. Now, Slot also says he loves deep runs. He thinks that's really important in football, so you run into space from deeper positions. And I think Alexander-Arnold in this situation would try and find this pass that would take Liverpool in a straight attack and they can go forward and be transitional. But does Slot want him to make this pass, or does he want him to slow it down and try and keep control and arrive in the final third in a more controlled manner? Because we were speaking about rest defence last week. And so when Liverpool get forward really quickly, maybe you make decisions too quickly and you're not in a good rest defence situation, so you can concede transitions and then you're not prepared to deal with them. The other option that Frimpong might have in a situation like this, that Alexander-Arnold often had, was to play it wide to Salah. That's what they would often do. Instead, the ball doesn't come through in this exact example against Bournemouth. Wirtz doesn't get the ball. He really wants it. He wants the ball. He's in space. And what you get is a quick back and forth between Szoboszlai and Frimpong on the wide areas. And then they just don't make the passes that they could to take them forward. And so the individuals in this situation, are they doing what Slot wants them to do and slow it down and control it, which then means that you're not accessing players up the pitch quicker? Or is it because the players don't have the skill set to do it? Because when this move continues, the ball ends up with McAllister tries to force it long, because he likes to play the long forward passes like Jurgen Klopp does. But this is kind of what we're seeing. So without Alexander-Arnold there, they have to progress in a different way. And that might be having knock-on effects to other parts of the team.
Okay, that's nice. But I guess one of the reasons they brought in someone like Florian Wirtz, John, is to help with that creative load. How have you gauged his first couple of games at Liverpool? But also, is he being used to his highest sort of potential?
Yeah, I think we should go back and focus on what JJ was talking about with respect to control and what Slot sees that control as, because control is, as he wants to do it, is very different from what maybe we might expect from other elite teams, where often in the sort of post-Guardiola world, the idea is that you squeeze opponents deep into their own penalty box and then you possess the ball quite safely because you've got the space to do it. Actually, Slot is quite different to that, because when he's talking about control, he's saying, we're not going to play the first pass forward, we're going to wait until we can decide the moment when we should go, and we should have those tempo shifts. The problem is when you get rid of Trent Alexander-Arnold and you bring in Frimpong and you make your creative player now Florian Wirtz, because it raises a question about where do you want Wirtz to thrive on the pitch. Do you want him to drop in deep and get involved in this this slower build-up at the back and then make the decision about when you're going to play the ball forward. Because if you do that with someone like Wirtz, it is going to give you plenty of like sustainable forward momentum. But the problem then is that when the ball goes forward, Liverpool want to attack quickly. It's a tempo shift. It means that Wirtz isn't in and around the box. And alternatively, if you want to keep Wirtz around the box where you might want him to be, maybe your progression will be slightly less sustainable. And we saw that example that JJ gave where it seems as though Szoboszlai and Frimpong didn't make the best decision about when to go forward. So this is the first question that we need to think about when we think about why is it that Florian Wirtz maybe hasn't had the greatest start to his time at Liverpool. And I think we should explore that a little bit more because, as we're saying, it's about where should we play Wirtz on the pitch to get the most out of him. And for me, the answer to that is in the final third, because as I see it, Florian Wirtz is what I call a high volume final third player. What that means is he just likes to get a load of touches in the final third, and he likes to do that in such a way that he can exploit space, he can create space for his teammates, and he can then manipulate that space and generate chances for them. So on the data in front of me here on this viz, what we've got is the players in the top 5 European leagues last season for the most final third touches. Right. So this is the guys who are just doing the most in the final third, and we can see Florian Wirtz here, third on the list behind players like Jeremy Doku, Michael Olise, Kevin De Bruyne is here, Lamine Yamal, best player in the world probably at this point in time. These are players who you want to have on the ball, you want them to have a lot of actions, and you want to have them on the ball near the goal. Florian Wirtz is in that group. So already it's kind of raising questions about Liverpool having the majority of their control in a deeper area. How does that influence and impact the way that Wirtz is playing? I just want to run through a sequence from Wirtz from last season, just to show you, give you a real concrete example of what this looks like on a football pitch.
This is Wirtz playing for Leverkusen.
This is Wirtz playing for Leverkusen against Liverpool.
Okay.
Taps over here, the defender on the ball, carrying the ball forward from a deep position. Wirtz has found space between the lines. He's showing for the ball, he's going to receive the ball, and his first thought here is, I can get the ball through to Granit Xhaka in the channel so that he can get to the byline and play a cutback, which is exactly what he does. So immediately receive, show the ball, move the ball onto a more dangerous area. Here's Wirtz in space again. Now Liverpool are wary of this, so one of the Liverpool players actually comes and marks him, but at that point he still is able to peel off the back of the player into space again when the ball is played forward and is able to receive the ball in these areas where he's so dangerous from, around the edge of the penalty area, because he receives that ball, he has lots of players around him, but he's able to play just a little chip pass into the feet of Frimpong, who is his teammate at Liverpool now, and Frimpong has a brilliant chance in front of goal.
What's interesting here is that the natural outlet for Frimpong is to go to Wirtz, and then Wirtz is to go to Frimpong. But unfortunately, Frimpong's staying wide, so obviously Wirtz is also not influential in that movement as well, right?
Yeah, but I think what's so interesting about this is that what you're getting from Wirtz is you're not necessarily seeing like incredible things all the time, right? It's not like big actions. They're all lots of little small actions that when you aggregate them together, you're like, suddenly you recognise this guy is making the whole attack tick along. And actually what he's doing is gradually creating space. You don't realise it. This constant pass move, find space, opens up the opposition to the point where Frimpong can then come inside, find space, and he can find him with a really nice little pass. This is what he's really good at. This is the area you want to get him in, and this is not the area where Liverpool are finding him in. And I think what's really interesting is that actually we go back to that data showing his high volume of touches last season. This is the top 10 players. There's no Liverpool player in this list. And in fact, if we look at the teams, you've got Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain. These are all teams who like to play in that, I would say, more Guardiola-inspired way, where you want to have controlled possession higher up the pitch, around the edge of the box, where you can then have these elite players like Wirtz who can break down those low blocks and be dangerous. And this then shows up in the data from this season so far, obviously with the caveats that we've only got 2 games so far in the Premier League. But the reason why I'm showing this table of Florian Wirtz's touches per area over the last 4 seasons is because I think it shows quite starkly the differences between the way that Wirtz is playing now for Liverpool than the way he was playing for Leverkusen. So I've gone back to Xabi Alonso's first season at Leverkusen. Now in that first season he joined midway through, so the numbers are slightly down, so you can see only 65 touches. But in the following season, this is the famous Leverkusen season where they nearly won everything, didn't quite win.
They went unbeaten in the league at least.
Yeah, he gets 85 touches per game on average, so getting a lot of touches. And as we can see for Liverpool so far, that's dropped down by about 20, so 20 fewer actions from him on the pitch for Liverpool so far, with the caveat that the teams that they're playing are obviously trying to stop Liverpool from having control. But so far, you're not getting the most out of Wirtz because he's just not having the ball as much as he would. And then if we start breaking it down by the area on the pitch where he's having it, again, stark things start showing up. Touches in his own penalty area, double what they've been before at Leverkusen, and you can see the defensive third as well, jumping right up, so suggesting that he is having to drop deeper and help out in that build-up at times as well. Middle third even still a bit lower, but the big thing that I think stands out for me is this attacking attacking third number is basically half the amount of touches in the final third that he was getting for Leverkusen, and understandably his touches in the opposition penalty area are down as well. So regardless of what this is going to look like for Wirtz in future, at the moment, the reason why I think Wirtz is not looking as good as potentially he has done in the past is because he just isn't being put in those situations that he likes to thrive in. So this is all of the theory. I thought it would be good to have just a few concrete examples.
Okay. Does it annoy you sometimes then when we have fans and they're like, he was useless? Because actually when you zoom out of it, fundamentally is that he's not been used effectively in the way he was perhaps at Leverkusen.
Exactly, so he's getting the ball less than he would want in these areas, but also the way that Liverpool are playing, and this will show up in these sequences, is actually quite different and doesn't really suit what he wants to do. I've got 3 sequences. In these sequences, I'm going to spend all the time being like, oh look, Florian Wirtz is in space. So just to give you the heads up on that. Here we are, Liverpool playing against Bournemouth. They're playing from right to left, and Florian Wirtz is in space. So he's going to receive the ball from Szoboszlai, and when he does so, this is a really nice example of where you're getting that replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? First ball comes in, he's able to play the ball into the channel to Mohamed Salah. Now, Mohamed Salah runs to the byline and comes back. And Liverpool do have like a bit of a settled possession here. They have the opportunity to try and break down a low block if they want to. Salah's played the ball back to Szoboszlai via Frimpong. And this is great, right? Because you've had Wirtz starting a little bit deeper, he started the play off, and then they bided their time long enough in the forward area to bring Wirtz back into play, get him in space. Now, what you would think is if you were trying to make the most of Wirtz, what you do is get the ball to him here and see him doing some of the things we saw him doing for Leverkusen, where he's manipulating space, bringing his teammates into play. But actually what ends up happening here is that Szoboszlai does what you might expect Liverpool to do in previous seasons, which is use those wide triangles to generate a chance, right? So you get a double movement here. So Frimpong goes in behind, Salah comes deep for the ball, and Szoboszlai plays the ball to Salah, and this is what I mean about speeding up the play. Salah just takes an immediate first-time cross here into the box. You've got Ekitike, you've got a striker to aim at now. You can thrive in chaotic situations. Why not just get the ball in there and see what breaks down? Effectively, what that means is you've got Wirtz in a perfect position to do the things he does well, but they decide not to use it. Here's another clip. So this is from the second half, so now Liverpool playing in the other direction, and we've got Konate carrying the ball from deep, and he's under pressure from the Bournemouth players, but he's able to play the pass to Wirtz, who, guess what, he's in space.
He's in space again.
He is in space. So this is a perfect situation because what this does is because they play through the press, they've got a bit more of a transitional, like an artificial transition as we would call it, a situation with Wirtz in space and then essentially 4v3 really against the Bournemouth back line. Now Wirtz has really nice access to Salah, so he plays the ball into Salah's feet. And in this situation, you're looking at the way that Bournemouth's back line is opened out and you think, this is going to be very dangerous. So Salah tries to play Wirtz immediately in behind, but it doesn't quite come off properly. He slightly miskicks it, and so Wirtz has to stop his run, turn around and come back. But fortunately, he's still close to Salah, so it's fine. He plays the ball directly into his feet. But you can see immediately he's in that scenario where he's like, okay, I'm here, I'm open. He's showing for the ball. But Mohamed Salah looks up and he sees there's a 2v1 on the other side of the pitch. Salah's immediate thought is if we can get the ball into that area, then it's going to be almost guaranteed chance of a goal. Tries to play the pass, doesn't come off, it goes to the centre-back. And it's worth saying that this is a perfectly fine way of playing. This is the way Liverpool play. They look for these quick plays where they can destabilise a defence, get in behind, and they have the players who can really exploit them. It doesn't come off, but it's another nice example of what Wirtz is expecting and how he wants to play, not really matching with the way that the Liverpool are playing right now. I've got one final example of this.
Wirtz in space, can I get?
Wirtz is in space. Yeah, Wirtz starts off in space in this one, but the reason I've included this one is because I've watched all of Wirtz's actions in the 3 games he's played for Liverpool in competitive games so far. And this is one of the few examples I could find of him receiving the ball in the sorts of areas where he would want to and being able to do the things on the ball that he might want to do. This is an example of him Wirtzing a little bit.
Have you just made up a word? Wirtzing?
Wirtzing, yeah. He's going to receive the ball from Dominic Szoboszlai, but as soon as he receives it, and this is what a smart player he is, he now recognises that the space has opened out in the midfield. It's behind him, he's got his back to the space, but he's already thinking, how do I get into that space? And there's 2 options. He can either carry the ball around, or he can get there after playing the ball off, which is what he decides to do. So he lays the ball back to McAllister, finds his way into that space. McAllister plays the ball into Szoboszlai, and again, this is like really nice positional play, right? You're using the position of your players to just generate means of playing through lines of pressure. Szoboszlai is through the next line of pressure, but you can see Wirtz is in space again. Into space.
How many Wirtz in spaces have we had in this?
Wirtz in space. But the beauty of this is that not only does he find space himself, so he has time to make the pass as well as he can. He's got the ball under control. He's also pulled in 2 Bournemouth players, and that means that he's created a free player in Szoboszlai again through the line. So he plays that pass into Szoboszlai's feet, And again, immediately thinks, where's the space? Where's the most dangerous space for me to be? And you can see him making that run here. Now, in the event, what ends up happening here is that Szoboszlai plays the ball to Gakpo. Gakpo plays across into the box. It goes immediately to the goalkeeper again in this instance. So again, just a bit of a discrepancy between what Wirtz wants to do and what Liverpool seem to be wanting to do this season. And so, yeah, raises questions, I think, and a couple of questions that Slot has to answer. So I think the two main ones are, the thing we started off talking about is what happens when you take your creative passer from the back line and put them further forward in the field? How does that influence Wirtz? And then the second question is, what influence does it have if your creative player is a guy who wants to, his instinct is to slow the game down, create space, exploit space, and the rest of the team want to play quickly. They want to try and generate chaos to destabilise the opponent and attack in those situations. Those are the two questions that Slot has to ask himself, I think, in order to get the most out of Florian Wirtz going forward in the future. I think he will find answers to those questions. It's obviously very early days right now, but I think it's just really interesting showing you how you take a player from one context, put them in another context, and that player can look much less as though they're thriving than they were in the former context.
Yeah, have faith in Wirtz. Find Wirtz in space, get the t-shirt. All right, let's move on, because one team I am a little worried about is Aston Villa, who've only picked up 1 point in 2 games and haven't even scored a goal yet. So here's Sam Tighe, who's been digging in a little deeper.
Aston Villa have started the season badly, and while new signings could help, a solution may already be at Unai Emery's fingertips. So, what's changed and how can things improve? I'm here with BOYLE Sports to find out. Villa have endured a slow summer transfer window, had a man sent off in game week 1 and lost another to injury a week later. Not good. Nevertheless, Emery has set his team up cautiously so far, utilising 4 central midfielders and a defensive-minded fullback pairing. The byproduct of this is that the team is narrow and slow. That narrowness hurt them against Newcastle, whose pressing suffocated Villa's build-up, leading to the second worst pass completion rate of any team on the opening weekend. And a lack of speed hurt them against Brentford, who let them have the ball, clogged the middle, and bet on Luca Dean and John McGinn not beating them 1v1. But the good news is the solution might already be on the bench. Ian Maatsen, Evan Gesson and Donyell Marlon would bring pace and directness. Adding just one of these players to the starting 11 could change everything.
Cheers for that, Sam. Much appreciated. Right, let's talk about Liverpool some more, because Ekitike, he started off well, hasn't he?
Yeah, what an impressive start to his Premier League career. I think we've all enjoyed watching him play. He scored 3 goals in 3 competitive games, hit the ground running. And I think we can actually contrast what has happened with Ekitike with what's happened with Wirtz, because as we said, Wirtz is a player coming from a context where they're playing to his strengths, and he's now going to a team where those strengths haven't been played to so far. What we've got in Ekitike, I think, is the opposite. It's taking a player from one context in which they're thriving and putting them in another context which is similar to that, and they've thrived. So what's the lesson we learned from there? But I've got some data here just to help you out. So this is the teams with the most goals from fast breaks in the top 4 leagues in Europe last season. And Liverpool last season scored the most goals from fast breaks. And if we look at the team second on the list, it's Frankfurt, who scored 12 goals in 4 fewer games. Fast breaks obviously are coming from turnover situations, which are slightly different from what we've been talking about, what Slot wants to do. But those fast breaks are generating the same kind of conditions that Slot wants to generate in possession, where you're able to create a lot of space in the opposition's defensive structure. There's a lot of space to attack, and you've got the players who are really good at doing that. And guess what? Ekitike is very good at doing that. So another piece of data for you here, another viz. This is fast break statistics from the players, individuals from around the top 4 leagues in Europe, again, last season. So we can see here, Ekitike is third on that list when we break it down in terms of expected goals created per game from these sort of fast break scenarios. So this is a guy who thrives at playing in those sorts of scenarios where there's lots of space to attack. He can run in behind or receive the ball from a midfielder who's carrying the ball through the lines. This is a guy who's going to do well. And, you know, before I showed you that list of players with high volume final third engagement in games in Europe, there was no Liverpool players on that list. If we look at this list, there is a Liverpool player on it, and it is Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah is another player who thrives in these sorts of situations. So Liverpool clearly, as we saw from the previous graphic, generating these sorts of conditions for players who thrive in these sorts of scenarios. So what I just wanted to do quickly is just show you the context within which the last 5 Ekitike goals came in, and then compare them with the the context within which the last 5 Salah goals came in open play. But what I think is really interesting here is there's a few things that we can notice about each situation that I think ports across to every single goal that we're going to talk about quickly here. That is, one, there's lots of space that's opened out. The opposition's defence is badly positioned, and often the ball is between the lines of the defence and the midfield. So you can see here, Frankfurt have the ball, there's lots of space to attack. The opposition, Hoffenheim's back line is all over the place, and there's plenty of space for them to attack. This is a game against Bochum. Again, this is a ball in behind this time, but again, lots of chaos in the defensive team and lots of space to attack. And this is what we see just over and over again. Receiving the ball in between lines, lots of space between back lines. These are the areas that Ekitike is thriving in. This is the goal against Spurs that most people might remember, because Ekitike receives the ball in the channel and then he comes back inside and scores from that. And again, this goal against Heidenheim at the end of last season, where you can see all of the things that I'm talking about. If we then go and look at the last 5 goals that Salah scored, we see similar things happening. I say similar things because this is the Bournemouth camera angle, which doesn't show you a huge amount. But believe me, this is obviously an open transition situation.
I trust you.
You can see the back line all over the place, lots of space to attack, ball between the lines. This is going to end in a goal. This is actually slightly different because this is a high turnover, so Liverpool win the ball back when the opposition are in possession. But as a result of that, they are able to generate this sort of similar situation where there's lots of space in the back line for Salah to exploit. Here's a perfect example of a goal against Spurs, where you can see the ball carrier here has the ball in space between the 2 lines, and Salah can run off the back of that line and score a goal. Goal against Palace, this is a bit more aerial, but again, lots of space. I'm just reiterating this because I think it's really interesting that the last 5 goals that they both scored have come from very similar sorts of scenarios. And this is the final goal in that comeback against Bournemouth where Salah scored that goal. So I think really interesting, the lesson that we learn from this is that if you take a player from a team that they're thriving in, and you put them in your team doing similar things to the team that you've bought the player from, then you shouldn't be that surprised to see that player hitting the ground running. And I think, interestingly enough, maybe the irony here is that the goals that Ekitike is scoring, maybe not the kind of goals you would expect to see him scoring. I think the majority of goals that he scored last season were much closer to the goal. But this is what you get when you buy an elite player. Even when Liverpool maybe aren't at their best, he's still scoring those goals from the edge of the box, and Liverpool will improve. He will therefore improve because they are doing the things that he is good at. So I have a lot of hope to see Ekitike right at the top of that goal scoring table at the end of the season.
Speaking of attackers joining Liverpool, here's Phil Hay with a fun story.
Have you heard the story of the Newcastle United striker who's attracting interest from Liverpool and takes himself out of the picture while the saga plays out? I know who you're thinking of, Alexander-Isak. And you'd be right. But do you know that a near identical situation played out in 1946? The story concerns Albert Stubbins, a striker at Newcastle United who attracted post-war interest from Liverpool. It was controversial, but if Isak's looking for a positive omen, Stubbins got his move in the end. Not only that, he got himself onto the front cover of one of the Beatles' most iconic albums too, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. If you like this story and you want more like it, or if you want the breaking news from football in your inbox every morning, sign up to the Athletic FC newsletter using the link below.
Thanks, Phil. Anyway, Ekitike off to a great start. Wirtz, room for improvement. Mo Salah, last season, greatest player ever. This season, are we seeing how Liverpool perhaps are looking to be, I guess, less reliant on him?
Maybe, because he won't be 33, which I think he is now, forever. Like he wasn't 32 forever.
Exactly, like most human beings.
Yes, well, that's true of most. You want to plan for the future, and they've bought players that they wanted now, like Wirtz, obviously has come in, and Ekitike. So this is what you're looking at now, and it's interesting whether his role will change. But we only have 2 Premier League games to go in this season, so the numbers that I have that show that he has had fewer touches and made fewer dribbles and attempted fewer shots, they're caveated by being, like, there's only 2 games that we've seen him play in the Premier League, but also the 2 teams they're playing against were playing in a really aggressive man-to-man system. So what Slot has said is, like, if you're playing really open transition and man-to-man, it's very hard to do anything tactical because you're just having to just deal with constant battles. So there's nothing really you can do. And what we know from Salah is that last season he had to Slot tried to build something around him so he didn't have to do so much defensively, and he had a great season. He scored 1,000 goals, less than that. But so we see him in different screenshots of any game where he's still in those high positions to receive the ball when Liverpool are going forward really quickly. So like we say, we want to be fast in transition, and Salah was one of their main outlets. Take the ball, you can rely on him to control it and take on people and do really well with that. But If you go back through Liverpool games where he's not that effective, it's often when he's not supported by players around him, and that comes on back to the players that they've signed, like Frimpong and stuff like that. So in a game that Newcastle beat them, which is a League Cup final, Salah on a passing network looks very isolated because you have Quansah, who's basically centre-back playing at right-back. He's not going to get forward because that's not his skill set, which then means you have to help try and build another way, and Dominic Szoboszlai drops deeper, which is what we've seen when he was playing at right back in the last game that we're talking about. So you don't have the wide triangles John mentioned earlier that are really important to how Liverpool play and traditionally have built. They've traditionally built with wide triangles, but they're now playing kind of through the middle with a striker who's running in behind. You've got Wirtz who's also getting a lot of touches through the middle when they're running in behind. And so suddenly that means that maybe you have to hold more width with Salah and Gakpo on the other side. So then when your fullbacks come in, like we were talking about earlier, you want them to be wide. So Frimpong's coming in, and if Frimpong pushes up, then the other team has to work out who covers the normally left midfielder. Does that take away space for Salah? Does it become quite as important creatively in the final third if he's not receiving it deep to then run with it? It does make it a little bit of difference. And the game that he's played against Newcastle, Salah really isolated. Szoboszlai is not a right back. Did a decent job, to be fair, but you can just see that the network is not exactly as probably you'd want to get Salah into his dangerous situations. However, he is still dangerous. So when you get him and you can ping the ball to him up top, see he's starting really wide right of the Newcastle defence, you play a long ball towards him. He's one of the best players in the world. He can control that, no bother, and then moves inside as ever he has done. There's actually a situation quite early in the game where if it weren't for brilliant defending by Tino Livramento, whose name I remember. If it was not for him stepping in at exactly the right time, 100% Liverpool are going to score early, and then they can try and get that control that Slot wants. And in the past, what Liverpool would do, I don't know if we'll see this so much this season, is that when they're building up from the back, like Konate might have a long pass out to Salah, who drops from a wide right position to receives, and then you can play it backwards. And when you had Alexander-Arnold, like we talked about earlier, Alexander-Arnold has a skill set to put it onto his left foot, right foot, and then ping it over the top for Salah to chase, and then he's your player that's taking you forward. But at the moment, they've got Wirtz dropping deeper to try and build up that way, when really you want the team to maybe build, but then quickly change tempo, get to the final third, and then let Wirtz do all the magic. But then how does Salah combine with them in those situations? So the goal that Liverpool scored late against Newcastle, Wirtz is not on the pitch. But I think you see more of what of probably what Slot wants from Salah, but it's still not exactly what Salah may be best at. So Konate has the ball late in the game. Newcastle have 10 men. The context is important, and they've been run all game, and Newcastle are knackered now. But Konate, rather than trying to force it forwards, puts his foot in the ball. We talked about this before. John's got a video when Brighton used to do this. This is why teams do this, try and bait a press, to try and open up the opposition team. And that's exactly what happens. Konate has a really clever, he shows the ball one way, he swaps his body one way to move the defender to that side, and then immediately plays at the other side of him, and this starts as high tempo move. So they're always slow build up, and then fast. And that's what you get. And that's where players like Wirtz will excel, because they're amazing in these moments. So when this like one touch and two touch passing move goes on, what you have is Chiesa ends up playing it wide to Salah, who's holding the width wide. You get Gakpo on the other side. Actually, it's Rio who's come on at this point, a young lad. And so when the ball goes out to Salah, and they've played through this press, it's the first time they've managed to actually take advantage of Newcastle being a man down. And there's that famous step over from Szoboszlai to set up the youngster Rio to score that goal. And so Salah will combine with them really well. But what will be interesting to me is that how he combines with Wirtz in the final third will be interesting, because you've got Ekitike there as well. And last season, you'd have had maybe a false nine. So you wouldn't have the extra player there. And the extra player that you would have had there would be in a position to protect possibly against counterattacks. And now you don't. So when you're a man down with your rest defence, you then might come into these transitional moments where Salah might try and create something, but because he's got two players next to him in his space even, but also just not defending behind him, what happens when they lose those balls? And that's kind of what I think we were talking about last week, the rest defence. And it's kind of interesting.
I think it's very interesting.
I think it's worth talking about, it's important to diversify your threat, right? If you're too reliant on one player, if that player doesn't perform, then you're not going to play as well. If you now have Mohamed Salah and also Hugo Ekitike in the team, then you're going to be more likely to have threat from both of those players. And it also makes it harder for teams to defend, right? Because if all your threat is coming through one player, they can double up on that player and it creates space elsewhere. But you don't worry about it so much because there's not any threat. As soon as you put that other threatening player into the front lineup, it's like, oh, do we double up on Salah? Do we double up on Ekitike? How do we balance this? So it's going to make Liverpool a better team, this.
And also, I'd like just lastly, they've got new players. It is a new team that they're building. They're moving on from what they were. They are doing that, and that will take a little bit of time to get the chemistry right. So there will be players out of position. It doesn't mean that the system is wrong or they're suddenly bad. It's just these things will be teething. But if consistent things do happen that cause those issues that we've talked about, that's when you start wondering, whether they are able to defend their title, like you suggested at the start of the show.
Yes, I like that. Very quickly before we go, Rio Igamo's goal. I want both your opinions on this. Is it a Szoboszlai assist or a Salah assist?
Yes.
We'll leave it there.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football.